What we do mean by going steady is this, that two teenagers would see each other regularly more than once a week. Number two, that their friends would recognize that no other teenager is to talk to either one of them or have anything to do with them by way of being any close friend. Number three, it's a strict hands-off approach for everybody else, but that the two of them can go anywhere and do everything. They're constantly in each other's country. They are constantly in each other's company. This is what we mean by the going steady, namely, seeing each other more than once a week. Their friends recognize that they must not be involved with either party, and that thirdly, the two of them are doing everything together. The trouble with that is very immature. For one thing, one's on the shelf if the other's not available. It's a very lazy way of making friends. And I do not think we should talk about the premature steady date merely in terms of saying, is it immoral or anything like that? That it stimulates people to sexual intercourse before they're ready for it, things like that. I'd rather say this. Look what they're missing. They're missing the chance to meet other people. And by meeting other people, just to know a lot more and to be a lot more attractive. Next question. Father, everyone says it is wrong to go farther than making out when kids are going together. But even if it's not true love, cannot it be possible to want to give of yourself? Notice how this question goes. Everyone says it is wrong to go farther than making out when kids are going together. Now here we hit the problem of local slang. We also hit not only the problem of local slang, but time slang. Slang changes. And it changes in different areas. I'll have to define my terms. Generally, I have heard making out meaning sexual intercourse. Now, some people don't mean that. They simply mean kissing. It's just like what people mean by necking and petting. You know, sometimes people were saying this. Necking means everything above the neck. Petting means everything below the neck. Well, holy smoke is all you can say. That gets pretty geometrical. So, but even if it's not true love, can it not be possible to want to give of yourself? This is the typical question a girl will ask. She will forget that when she wants to give of herself, she may want to give of herself so much she'll never want to take it back. You must remember this, that in the case of a girl's temperament, a woman is made to be cooperative. In other words, a woman is made to be what we call complementary. She helps out. She fills in. She is truly the service sex. She takes jobs that the male would never want. The danger is when she wants to give of herself at a certain point, do you know that she no longer has the free will to say no? The fact is, in the case of both sexes, the closer either male or female gets to full, complete sexual pleasure, the less possible it is for anybody to turn back. And just before full sexual pleasure in the male with emission of semen from his penis, or in the female with a corresponding, as it were, what would we say, a reaction in her vagina that, as it were, receives by a muscular contraction. See, while the male would have muscular contraction in his penis to expel semen, the female's muscular contractions are to receive it, to receive the seed. So at that stage, just before this point is reached, there is no longer any free will. And in the girl, the point would be this. When she just wants to forget everything and bury herself in an absolute nirvana, an absolute nothingness, this is the time when she's already gone too far. She cannot back out after that. That's why when a girl says, oh, I just want to symbolize that I want to give, the trouble is she is skating on extremely thin ice. In other words, can she ever turn back? And this is why I warned you before that if there's a family where a girl is not loved, she should not think she'll get that love through the cheap, moth-eaten Romeo way. Because it's fake affection when somebody says, okay, I'll be the oochie, smoochy, coochie type, and yet there's no real love there. Next point. Father, to what extent can a teenager go when she likes a boy a whole lot? Is it good to have a boy who's just a friend that will tell you things? And the answer is certainly it's good to have a boy who's just a friend that will tell you things. The point is we're human beings. We should talk with other people. We should be interested in other people. And this is how we ourselves develop ourselves. And you should have teenage friends, boys and girls, in other words, fellows and girls. You should have friends like that. But the point is that while have your friends, you'll like some more than others. And actually, the fact is, some will move more closely into your life, and others will move out of your life. Some of them may stay with you a long, long time. But the big point is that you'll realize in all your friendships, you would never invade each other's privacy. I mean by that, into sexual familiarities that still do not have their place. And your reason for telling yourself will be this. Number one, not just the fact that sexual privacy is something that belongs in marriage, in other words, from a religious reason, but also that this is against the whole purposefulness in human nature and it can hurt someone I love. There's one statement that's made in one of the college textbooks on marriage, that there is very little premarital sexual intercourse. What they mean by that is as soon as a couple starts having sexual intercourse with great frequency, the likelihood of their ever getting married goes down. And you know, this is where you hear that statement again and again, and try before you buy. What the heck? Everything else you do, you try. You buy a shoe to put it on your foot. You try it first. All right? Why don't people try sexual intercourse before marriage? Why don't they play around sexually with other people? The answer to that is that sexual intercourse in itself is something that has the power of dynamite. In other words, it can be tremendously for good or tremendously for bad. In marriage, it's tremendously for good. As an optional symbolism of love, used outside marriage, it can just destroy friendship as much as it can build up in marriage giving. Because in marriage, it's selfless. Outside marriage, it's selfish. Next question. Father, is petting immoral? Now here we have to understand what we mean by petting. And I'm going to define my terms. See, it's the whole sex education work, we are very clear on using proper, respectful language, and we say what we mean. By petting, I mean the fondling of the body, particularly of the genital organs. That means the fondling of the penis, the fondling of the vagina, the fondling of the labia, the feminine lips that are just over the vaginal and urinal opening, the fondling of these parts of the body. Now, when these parts of the body are tenderly fondled, then the body gets prepared for sexual intercourse. That's why. And this is what we mean by petting, and it is good for two people who have belonged completely to each other in love and want to symbolize it. For them, therefore, this has its purpose. But you see, outside of marriage, if you prepare the body for sexual intercourse, you're just putting a match to a forest fire, getting the forest fire started. That's why petting would be immoral in any biblical moral standard that would say that the use of sexual privileges outside marriage is against God's law because it doesn't have its place. So with that understanding, we make it clear. Now, this does not mean that affection is wrong. And here is where a lot of people fail to make a distinction. It is true that affection is good. It is also true that all of us should feel we are loved. And I mean fellows as much as girls. The typical male reaction is, hey, I don't need love. Nobody needs to love me. I'm rough. I'm tough. Believe me. When anybody's looking, that's the way the male reacts. When nobody's looking, believe me, he's darn glad to have somebody come around and say, gee, you're wonderful. So the big point here is that we must remember affection is not the same thing as sexual desire. Affection means a kiss. Affection means an embrace. Affection means a tender caress. And affection means tender language. But affection also means that it's genuine. Now, what you have to realize is this. The way we are built as human beings, strong affection can move into sexual desire. There is no place where you can exactly say, I go so far. You know, the trouble with many teenage audiences I talk to, they say, well, Father, if a boy's kissing his girlfriend, how many pounds of pressure per square inch is permitted? You know, sometimes some of you have read books that say this. For the teenager, if you kiss someone else, boys, kiss your girlfriend the way you kiss your sister. And all the fellows say, ugh. Now, why is it that some of these wisecracks come up that the brothers and sisters aren't so affectionate to each other? The reason is because when you see your family life at home, this is the picture of marriage. So you start thinking of marriage as moonlight and roses. Oh, how wonderful it is. You forget that marriage is the ups and downs of everyday life, and you realize that a husband and wife have to live with each other the way you live with your brothers and sisters, which means you take each other for better or for worse. The next question. Father, is it really wrong to have intercourse before marriage? Now, here I want to make a very clear distinction. I am saying this, that in itself, sexual intercourse, the union of male with female, where the male would place his penis in the vagina of the female and emit his semen in her vagina, this in itself does not have a purposefulness before marriage. One reason it's a symbolism of complete giving between two people who don't belong to each other. And it simply rips the girl apart psychologically, because she feels completely wanted, and as it were, she's completely discarded the very next moment. The girl is the one who suffers. Girls don't like to hear this, but you can't change human nature. The girl is the one who suffers. Secondly, if a child is conceived because of this, then the child, strictly speaking, has no father. You say, well, physically, isn't the father the physical generator? No. Because human fatherhood means not just bringing a new life in the world. Human fatherhood means that there's a father who loves a child and brings that child up and works for the child. So that is why in itself sexual intercourse does not work. I admit sexual intercourse can be used for a physical thrill. I admit sexual intercourse can be used as a way of breaking monotony. Sexual intercourse can be used, that people say, as a way they think they're having fun. But it's still out of purpose. Now, something else though. While I said in itself is wrong, does this mean that everyone who does it automatically is doing something tremendously wrong in God's sight? I am saying this, that it is possible for people innocently to be caught off guard and to have an action of sexual intercourse before they know what's happened. I know one girl told me, Father, I'm going to be happily married soon, I hope. But my boyfriend and I, by accident, about a year ago, we were simply caught off guard, and believe me, we were so sorry it happened right away. We cried like babies, and we swore a mighty promise to God Almighty, this must never happen again, because we almost destroyed each other. And we have been extremely careful never to be caught off guard again, because having sexual intercourse before we are married was going to ruin our love. Now that's a case, that's an exact case. It's not a case of any confidential, I'm not telling things out of confidence, anything like that. I merely say it's a typical case that can happen. But I do say that in goodwill, people can be caught off guard. But that means that they were innocently caught off guard where they did not realize what was happening. This is why we tell teenagers, number one, be careful of your feelings. Number two, any area where drink is concerned means you're losing control of yourself. That's why. And like that girl I told you about before who said they have so much drinks on weekends, and I said, she's an alcoholic. Yeah. She already was addicted to alcohol in the sense that she couldn't stop. You know how we define the alcoholic. The alcoholic is one who cannot face reality with drink, who can't face it without it. Alcoholism does not mean that somebody's just a drunk. And alcoholism is nothing funny. It's broken too many families, and those of you who come from a family where one or the other parent is drinking know this, that your life may have been hell on earth because of it. There's nothing funny at all in a case like that. The next question. Father, is French kissing okay out of marriage? Now, the question is this. Is French kissing okay out of marriage? What do we mean by French kissing? This is an expression pretty commonly used throughout our country. It means this, that the male places his tongue in the mouth of the female. Sometimes this is called soul kissing. Sometimes this is called Columbine kissing and words like that. What I'm going to tell you is phrased very, very carefully, and I'm glad it's put on a recording because then I cannot be misquoted. I'm going to say this. We should not condemn French kissing with the wrong arguments. Sometimes you hear this statement. French kissing is very bad because it makes a teenager want sexual intercourse. And, oh, how filthy this is. Just imagine he puts his tongue in her mouth, how filthy that is. That's a very poor argument. Why? It's not true. The tongue is not filthy. A girl's mouth is not filthy. Our entire body is clean and pure, and God made it that way. And there is nothing filthy about any part of our body touching any other part of anybody else's body, if it's the proper time and place. That's not the argument to use. What we should say is this. A kiss of its nature is affectionate. The so-called French kiss, because of the tremendous concentration of nerves in the lips and in the tongue, this is a very intense way of manifesting affection. So we should say it is an intensely affectionate kiss. In other words, it is so affectionate that it can very easily move into a desire for full physical union. This is why it is dangerous for those who are single who do not want to be stimulated to sexual intercourse to be French kissing. Notice, I am not saying that in itself it's wrong. I am saying this, though, that normally for the average teenager who is very easily stimulated, it is out of place. The average teenager should not say, oh, it doesn't work that way for me. Why not? Because with no warning, suddenly you'll find, as we say, all hell breaks loose. You may say, it doesn't bother me this time or that time. You never know because moods go up and down. Suddenly you may find yourself completely out of control. So when questions come up about French kissing, I will be very, very frank on this. I am not trying to, as it were, use arguments that are out of place by being too strong. I'm rather saying this. We should use the proper argument. This means intense affection, and therefore it should be intense affection that would be reserved only for marriage. The next question. Father, is it wrong to feel the private organs of a girl with no intention of going to sexual intercourse? The answer there is that's another question with regard to petting, because this means it's fondling the parts of the body, and this tender caressing of the parts of the body prepares the body for sexual intercourse. You see, because this is necessary, and here's the purposefulness of God's plan in the body. Just as the male penis becomes stiff, which permits physical union of male and female, so in the female side, the area around her vagina must become stiff so that she could receive the male penis. This is God's plan. I tell you, my beloved friends, again and again and again, I as a priest, I as a single priest, who have not given up marriage because it's bad, but have rather dedicated myself to God for His apostolate, I am the first one to tell you and to urge you to reverence and respect the body. And don't be afraid of the goodness that God put in our reproductive system. This is nothing to be ashamed of. You and I can get on our knees and just adore the goodness that God put in the reproductive organs of our body. They're sacred. They're not shameful. And that's the big point to remember in this thing. We are not talking about something dirty that gets cleaned up in marriage. We are talking about something clean and good that has its purpose in marriage. Next question. Father, is it wrong to attend a movie which is not recommended, and then to attend this movie for the sake of analyzing the emotions of people, and to attend this rather blunt movie not for the sake of sex? The answer is that it is true that different people get different reactions from different movies. And it is true that the recommendations made in general are for the average person. So I admit very honestly that individuals might be not at all bothered by one movie while other people might be. And as your question is phrased, I say you are correct in saying that. Does that mean that we should presume we're not average? No, we should presume we're average. So therefore, we run along that line for an answer like that. Father, just how do you define going steady? Well, I think we've answered that one already. You see, it's an exclusiveness that's involved. Next one. Father, is it wrong to kiss a girl seriously? No, I think it would be wrong to kiss a girl foolishly. But I do think this. Maybe I should say, what does the girl look like, huh? But I think we should say this. I do not think that we should laugh at the kiss. I do not think we should ever ridicule the kiss. I think we should say a kiss is too sacred to be the object of ridicule. A kiss is a sign of reverence and affection. And I personally do not see why it should be a thing to be laughed at. Next question. Father, once syphilis has been cured, can it recur again even though sexual intercourse has not occurred? The answer is that in the case of cured venereal disease of syphilis and gonorrhea, once it is cured, it does not come back unless there is reinfection. What has happened in the country again and again is that people have been cured of social diseases, will go out and again have intercourse with a person who is infected with a social disease, and then they get the disease back again. The next question. At what age do you think parents should let children go out, like to the movies or something? Do you think that 7th grade is too young? I am going to do a very fast run for cover on this. Why will I give you no absolute answer? Because local customs differ. Local customs differ in a neighborhood, in a part of our country. It differs even with the climate, because it differs with the time of day. It differs whether the days are shorter or longer. All sorts of things like that come in. And that's why I say this is why parents groups should get together and have a uniform teenage code for their general neighborhood where the parents agree this is the way it's done. If they don't do that, then Judy comes from down the road and says, yeah, but Susie Q can do it, why can't I? And the poor parents are over the barrel. You know what some parents have done? When they get a question like this from their boy or their girl, they say, okay, if you were the parent and I were your son and daughter, what rule would you make for me? Do you know that ordinarily the teenager has made a stricter rule than the parent? I end that question with a question. Next question. Father, how long must I wait to have sexual intercourse if I am planning to be a doctor and cannot support a wife until I'm about 30 years old? Well, the answer is you better wait until you can support a wife when you're about 30 years old.